Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. A judge makes a ruling in the battle to free Britney Spears from a conservatorship controlled by her father.
Also, a civil lawsuit against rapper YNW Melly in what police say was a planned murder disguised as a random drive-by shooting. And another civil case in Ohio's Pike County murders. 8 people were killed.
Plus, the brother of a convicted killer speaks out about mental health issues.
It's going to explode. It was a ticking time bomb for sure.
A jury must decide a punishment. Law and Crime Daily covers court cases from coast to coast.
Was appointed conservator in 2008 when Britney was struggling with mental health problems. In a telephone interview, a judge declined to remove the father, but partially granted the singer's wish by naming a corporate fiduciary as co-conservator of her $60 million in assets. The pop star's attorney called her a high-functioning conservatee, a term psychologist and law and crime expert Dr. John Delatorre explains.
The idea that someone can be a high-functioning goes completely against the idea of gravely disabled, one of the criteria that you need in order to have a conservator. So I can see where the public is asking for a free Britney issue, though I'm not sure if she's able to think her way out of these kinds of complicated issues. And perhaps she just needs someone on her team to help her manage her life a little bit better, but not necessarily in a legal setting.
The judge said she would consider future petitions to remove James Spears as conservator, and the pop star's attorney signaled they plan to file such papers. So, Terry, Brian. Terry, let me start with you. Do you see that argument working a second time around? Why say, well, I'll consider such a move in the future? They already made that move.
You know what, Aaron? I think there's a very good possibility that Britney's argument will prevail the second time around. For whatever reason, the judge wants to move in incremental steps. She did already say that they could have a conservator as far as the financial company is concerned. She did appoint that Bessemer Trust Company. So I do think that ultimately, if they make the motion again, they will be able to remove her father as well.
So, Brian, why do it in increments? Why not just say, okay, we're going to do the whole thing in one hearing?
That's really difficult to understand, Aaron, because, of course, we don't know all the facts. A lot of these hearings are private, so we're not getting all the information about Britney Spears' mental health. The increments don't make sense to me unless you're saying there's going to be a change of circumstances between one motion to the other. If it's all the same, then this really makes no sense to me as to what the judge is doing here.
Yeah, Terry, and of course, that's the key part of this, what Brian just said, that we don't know all the facts. This was a closed hearing. We just know the outcome.
That's right. In private, something could be going on. Maybe she can't make all of her personal decisions. So the judge wants to keep the father there just in case.
Certainly. Terry and Brian certainly appreciate the insight on this high-profile case. Actress Lori Loughlin could be out of jail by Christmas. ABC News reporting that Loughlin could soon be moved out of a coronavirus lockdown and into the general inmate population at the Federal Correctional Institution in Dublin, California. Because her release date is set for Sunday, December 27th, prison policy allows her to back up her release date to occur before the weekend and before the preceding holiday. Loughlin pleaded guilty in what federal prosecutors called the Varsity Blues college admission scandal. A boxer ordered to pay more than $800,000 to a woman he assaulted in Cleveland claims he's broke. But as Angenette Levy tells us, there's yet another video showing Adrien Broner with a stack of cash, and the judge is telling him to fork it over.
Boxer Adrien Broner spent 2 nights in jail last week after failing to turn over documents about his finances in a civil case. Broner claims he doesn't have any money, but after being held in contempt of court and released from jail, he posted this video.
When my rich friend just came back through for me. Hey, man, man, I only had $13 before today.
This video is from Broner's Instagram account. This came after he posted a video a couple of weeks ago of a table full of cash after claiming he was broke. The lawyer representing the woman Broner assaulted outside of a Cleveland nightclub back in 2018 asked the court to order Broner to turn over the cash to the woman. Judge Nancy Margaret Russo has granted that request.
Needless to say, my client is re-traumatized every time these events occur because what she's experiencing is someone who simply defies the rule of law and defies any accountability. And, this judge was very, very clear in her warning to him that she wasn't going to put up with any of his shenanigans, and we will see where this all leads.
At this point, it's not clear when Broner will turn over that cash to the court or whether or not he'll pay it at all. He has until November 22nd to turn over his financial documents to the judge. I'm Angenette Levy for Law and Crime Daily.
Thanks a lot, Angenette. And now here's Chief Investigative Correspondent Brian Ross with what his team is working on this week.
Thanks, Aaron. Coming up this week on Brian Ross Investigates, an ugly legacy of the presidency of Donald Trump. Inside the growth of right-wing, white nationalist extremist groups, brought to us by a photojournalist who's been there for much of it.
Reclaim America! Reclaim America! Reclaim America! Reclaim America!
That's this week on Brian Ross Investigates on the Law and Crime Trial Network. Aaron?
Thanks a lot, Brian. And still ahead here on Law and Crime Daily, 8 killed, 6 arrested in a family feud in Ohio. The case now heads to civil court. Plus, another civil case involving rap artist YNW.
A civil suit has been brought against a rap artist recruited by Kanye West and others for the wrongful death of 2 of his crew members. YNW Melly, whose real name is Jamel Demons, also faces murder charges in a criminal court case over the killings of Anthony Williams and Christopher Thomas Jr. Police in Miramar, Florida say Demons killed the victims in October of 2018 and staged the crime to look like a drive-by shooting. Attorney John Phillips represents the families for the victim Christopher Thomas Jr. in the civil suit. He joins us live to discuss the case. John.
Hi, Brian.
First and foremost, thank you for coming here today and sharing your wisdom. Now, let's jump right into the questions. As I'm looking at this motion, you're literally going after everyone and their mother in this civil suit. Walk me through how the claim connects Jamie King, Demon's mother, and Jameson Francois, his manager.
Right. So as far as Jamie King goes, she had a bit of a battle of words, so to speak, before this happened with the other defendant, YNW Sack Chaser, and actually said she's got bigger guns than him. He's not going to intimidate her. And that allegedly led to the altercation. All of a sudden, Sack Chaser and Juvie, Chris Thomas Jr., are killed from within inside the car, not from a drive-by, from outside the car. And, the question is, did Jamie King incite this? And then with everybody else, because it was staged, because the items from the murder, the gun, the broken glass, were all covered up, and removed from the scene, then we've kind of expanded the circle because we were at the end of a statute of limitations with a criminal case that wasn't going anywhere fast because of COVID.
Now, I like the fact that you brought up that back and forth between Jamie King and what she's claiming is back and forth. When you hear that, if those claims that the decedent whose family you're representing, Mr. Thomas Jr., does have that kind of back and forth, do you feel that affects this case in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, it was Mr. Williams, YNW Sack Chaser, that had the back and forth with her, and she filmed a video. We have it where she basically said, "I've got bigger guns," and threatened him. And then if you fast forward past the shooting, a month after the shooting, Melly releases a video, according to the state attorney, saying, basically, "You never shut up, we got you." If you add those 2 videos together, and they're both what the state attorney says they are, sounds like to me you have a motive and an admission of a murder.
Gotcha. Now, let's go to what we're probably going to be anticipating on the back end of this, damages. In your motion, you quote say millions or tens of millions or more are the damages. I get that the jury decides the actual dollar amount, but what's the kind of thought process of putting that pen to paper and saying that amount or that unspecified amount?
People get so confused, non-lawyers get so confused when we allege the statutory minimum. In Florida, the statutory minimum is 30. So we'll say, damages exceed $30,000, and it's always, oh, they're only want $30,000. And so we just kind of spelled it out that this is millions to tens of millions, depending upon how the facts work. Ultimately, that's up to a jury, but that's why we pled it as the way we pled it.
All right, last question, John. This is a pretty strong case as I see it thus far. Is there anything about this case that maybe keeps you up at night and think, hey, I got to think of a strategy here?
The whole thing keeps me up at night. You know, these were all really good friends that wound up killing other good friends and covering it up. And it's disturbing. You know, we understand Melly has vibrant fans, but there's been death threats even of me. And we urge peace and justice. Like, it's going to take some time to get the criminal trial and the civil trial over with, but it's just, you know, we got to let justice take its course.
All right, John Phillips, I want to thank you very much for joining us here today, and best of luck with the upcoming case in civil suit.
Thank you.
Coming up after the break, we're back to the penalty phase of a pro baseball player convicted of a triple murder with a baseball bat. But first, a new lawsuit against the 6 defendants that lawyers say were involved in Ohio's infamous Pike County massacre. We'll be back after this.
And now to a civil lawsuit in Ohio's Pike County massacre. 8 members of the Roden and Gilly families were executed in 4 separate locations. Sometime later, authorities arrested 5 members of the Wagner family and 1 other relative of a different last name. Prosecutors ultimately dropped charges against grandmother Frederica Wagner when they came to believe she made an honest mistake about purchasing, of all things, bulletproof vests. All 6 of these arrestees are now civil defendants as well. With me live is attorney Brian Duncan, who is representing the family and the estates of the victims. Brian, thanks a lot for joining us here. You're arguing in court papers that both Rita Newcomb and Frederica Wagner likely participated directly or indirectly in planning the attack, and you're suggesting they conspired with the others who are charged with actually carrying out the attacks. How do you expect to prove that, considering the charges against Frederica Wagner were dropped?
Well, good afternoon, Aaron. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on here. Whereas we find it hard pressed to believe that, you know, those closest to the 4 individuals that committed these, you know, essentially mob-style hits would have no knowledge whatsoever of the dealings that were going to transpire. We've essentially pled in our complaint that we wish, you know, we seek to hold all of the defendants accountable for their actions, inactions, and or omissions, whether or not the same occurred before, during, or after the commission of the crime.
I understand. So Rita Newcomb was charged with forgery, perjury, and obstructing justice, but she pleaded guilty to a reduced misdemeanor of obstructing official business. You've suggested that you can also link her in as well.
Yes, you know, we believe that those 2 were essentially the matriarchs of the family. And again, through the discovery process in this civil case, as well as the ongoing criminal matters against the 4 individuals who allegedly, you know, perpetrated these heinous acts, we believe that we'll be able to, you know, create the causal connection by and among all the defendants to show that all of them, jointly and severally, should be and are accountable for the murders.
Are Rita Newcomb and Frederica Wagner the deepest pockets you can also go after as well here?
I can't answer that, you know, with 100% certainty. However, they do appear from our tertiary research to, you know, essentially have the deepest pockets. So to answer your question, yes.
Civil lawsuits have a lower burden of proof than a criminal case, and certainly that runs in your favor in this proceeding.
Yes, I would agree with that. I believe that, you know, not only do we have, you know, the law and the facts on our side, but also, you know, the court of public opinion should weigh favorably upon, you know, myself and most importantly, my client, you know, who are the remaining members of the Roden family.
It's been 4.5 years since those actual killings, and I hear your clients have been frustrated because the criminal cases are taking so long to unravel.
It's, you know, I can't speak to, you know, how frustrating it has to be for them. I know for myself, you know, from a tangential perspective, I've been involved for 2 years, and really there hasn't been much in the way of anything that has gone on in these cases. And, you know, now couple the COVID-19 into this, and yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's a slow moving process.
Certainly. Brian Duncan, plaintiff's attorney in the Pike County massacre in Ohio. Appreciate your time here on Law and Crime Daily.
Appreciate you.
And when we come back, the brother of a convicted triple murder defendant gives a jury a look at what went wrong with Brandon Willie Martin, a pro baseball player released from a mental facility and who killed just hours later. A former pro baseball player is now facing a possible death sentence after a jury convicted him for committing 3 murders. Brandon Willie Martin was found guilty of slugging to death with a baseball bat his father, his uncle, and a security system installation man. The jury must now decide whether Martin should be locked up in prison for the rest of his life or whether he should be executed. Terri Austin's here now to take us through some important testimony.
Aaron, the defendant's brother, Sean, described what he says was a steep decline in the defendant's mental health in the years before the murders. The brother described an incident where he had to pick up the defendant from spring training in 2012.
He just looked at me. He's like, Sean, don't you hear them? And I was like, who? And he was like, our family. He was like, they're talking to us right now. And I was just like, Brandon, I don't hear nothing. What are you talking about? And he was just like, Sean, they're talking so clearly. Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa. And at this time, our grandparents are dead. And so I knew at that moment it wasn't good at all.
And when you reacted the way you did, what was your brother's reaction to you?
Probably laughed or just stayed silent.
And your brother wasn't kidding when he was talking about hearing these voices.
He was dead serious.
He was dead serious?
Yeah.
Defendant's brother was a college football player and said he came home to search through the defendant's room once to see if the defendant was on drugs. The brother found nothing, but talked about another strange incident.
When I was back home training for the pro day, and I was mentioning my brother got a dog, and so he came into the room. His hands were wet. I don't know what from, maybe from water, maybe from dog pee, which I hope not. But he said, hey, smell this, and pushed his hand and mushed my face. I cocked back. Luckily, my dad tackled my brother, and I swung, and I hit the banister and broke my hand. And my mom was standing kind of by where our rooms were. My brother, I don't know how he did this, ran behind her, jumped on her, put both legs on her, and bit the top of her head. And at that moment, I ran full speed, picked him up, threw him up against the wall, and at that moment, I just saw just the relief in his eyes, or just something like just like an awakeness, like, and it was just, he had like the most shameful face ever. He was like, oh man, I messed up. One of those type of faces.
Martin's brother said the defendant was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and became more and more unstable. He said the defendant became violent on September 15th, just 2 days before the murders.
I woke up to my mom and my brother arguing upstairs. And so I go upstairs, and he's just arguing with her. She wants him to go see the psychiatrist appointment, which was like at 12 or 12:30. He doesn't want to go, complaining about his chest hurting, just wants to lay in bed. And at that point, when we started badgering him on, just let out the loudest, like, earth-shattering yell like that I've never even got close to hearing or feeling to this day. It set my bones in shivers. And he picked up scissors, came at us, and so we called the cops. We decide that my brother needs to be taken out. He needs to be arrested, or he needs to be held captive, because this situation over the years, in that point, it escalated and climaxed to a point where it was just like, man, it's going to explode. It was a ticking time bomb for sure.
So, Terri, the defendant was taken to a hospital, but the staff released him after 48 hours. The brother testified he rushed home when he heard his brother, the defendant, was being released, but didn't make it in time before the killings. This is tragic testimony.
It really is, Aaron. And what's more tragic is the fact that everyone knew he had these mental illnesses. And the witnesses that were presented on behalf of the defense all underscored that very point. We had Dr. Valcrew, who said that she actually diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia. We had Amy Arias, who was at the facility, and she said he was in a 5150 hole. And the most really tragic testimony, as you said, is from the brother, who said he was a ticking time bomb. So based on all of that, you would have thought they could predict what might happen, and they might have held him much longer and maybe even indefinitely.
Brian, what does the defense do at this point?
I actually think that this was a great witness for the defense. The reason why I'm kind of giving pause is because as I'm listening to this brother describe his brother, you can hear his pain. And as an older brother myself, I think this, from a legal standpoint, this works great, but also from an emotional standpoint, it really hits home. I have a tattoo on my wrist that says, "I am my brother's keeper," and I see a connection with this brother as well. As he's talking about his brother, you can tell that he was his keeper and he was looking after him, but he couldn't help him out.
Thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.